Today's show is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play in this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
The Agile brand.
Welcome to the B2B Agility Podcast, where we look at the factors that drive success in B2B marketing, with a focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make B2B brands stand out and thrive in a competitive marketplace. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advising Fortune 1000 brands on MarTech, marketing operations, and CX, best-selling author and speaker. Now let's get on to the show. Agility today means adapting your marketing playbook at the speed of AI, experimenting fast, learning faster, and never assuming yesterday's tech advantage still applies. Today we're going to talk about how B2B marketers should be thinking about AI in the months ahead and how to know if you're already behind. To help me discuss this, I'd like to welcome Victoria Blackwell, Senior Program Manager of Research Insights at G2. Victoria, welcome to the show.
Hi, Greg. Thrilled to be here. So happy to be on.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Before we dive in, though, why don't we start with a little background on yourself and your role at G2?
Sure. Yes, of course. So I am our Senior Program Manager for our Research Insights team here at G2, and I specialize in marketing and digital advertising as like an industry. So I'm a former practitioner in brand marketing for B2C brands. Then I transitioned to G2 and was immersed in all things B2B. So my goal, kind of having those two parts of my brain and being a practitioner myself, is to kind of bring this strategic mindset, analytical depth, and kind of maintain like a strong track record of not only cross-functional leadership, but publication, to not only kind of entice, but to also enjoy for fellow marketers, to make sure that getting the information out there is as easy as possible without it, being like 1,000 pages, a bunch of graphs, just really adding kind of context and color to the industry.
Great. So yeah, let's start by talking about AI-driven content. Certainly, lots of people talking about it, writing about it, making videos about it. They're making content about content. And so, let's talk about that and as well as personalization. And, I kind of say like AI is kind of the loudest, or content is the loudest AI use case.
Totally.
You cite Jasper's data showing 57% of marketers use generative AI for content creation. I feel like that's low, but
I know, right? I thought so too. When I was first researching, I was like, there's no way. Maybe someone who's bold enough to admit it.
I think there's a lot of people that, may not be 100% honest. And they use 55%, or 55% of them use AI for idea generation, but, warn that authenticity can suffer. So how can B2B teams keep scale from sounding synthetic?
Sure. And I think this is a really common problem when it comes to especially like novice users of AI content creation. But I think to simplify it, it's very much in a single phrase that you got to use AI to amplify human creativity, not replace it. And I think that is contextual in many ways. I think when it first came out, it was very like, this is going to take my job. Like, this is going to replace me. Like copywriters galore, where this is it, this is how I go. But it's really not. And I think that when you think about what AI content creation really is, like, you have to let AI handle like repetitive and generate like drafts, like, so first tasks, like getting just like that idea generation, getting it out there. And while people kind of shape tone, context, and emotional nuance, that's something that AI, fingers crossed, will hopefully never be able to do as well as a human. And for right now, ideally, when we talk about human creativity, that is what brings life to a brand. That's what brings life to text, and that's what brings life to content. So kind of when we talk about like tone and authenticity and all of these different aspects of content creation, that is something that AI will never be able to kind of match at a human level, because it's just, you can tell 9 times out of 10, like we're even seeing kind of even the content creation, like video to this day, like on Reels, on TikTok, it immediately you see in the comments, you're like, AI, like you didn't get me this time. It's like that can also translate into B2B as well. And like when something doesn't feel authentic, your customer, your potential customer, they know. And kind of with that, like focus on personalization, it really feels to not only just not being generic, but it's tailored and it creates real and very, I think, genuine interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to that end, a recent report from G2 predicts that adopters of AI-driven personalization will see a 50% jump in B2B buyer engagement. So real, tangible, engagement. What are some practical moves that marketers can make to move beyond? There's personalization that's like, I call it substitution. It's like, hi, Greg, here's your offer or whatever. But like to move beyond that kind of substitution to real personalization.
Totally. And I think that this is something when I initially made that prediction, like in my report, it was a bit of a shock and stun. I think, honestly, all 3 predictions that I made in my report, my team was kind of like, what is this? Like, are you sure? I was like, well, that's a beautiful prediction. Like, we're reading the data, we're looking to see like where it makes sense. And I feel like, especially with AI driven personalization, all of these kind of like, I call them like sparkles basically of like, oh, we could like, that looks good. Or like, oh, like this looks nice. And to be kind of like practical when it comes to making this personalization go beyond the hi first name, I would say probably my first one would be to kind of tap into your signals, like using behavioral and intent to like tailor messaging based on what buyers are actually like interested in, instead of like just making content to make content is probably one of the worst wastes of time, and your customer won't have any value in it. So when they like the content, they engage with it. And when they visit pages, and when like all of these like little sparkles of data and sparkles of like real-time view of your customer, like that needs to be not only like timely but relevant. And then the second I would say is probably to personalize the journey, not just the message. And I think that that's sometimes where it can get lost, where it's like, okay, well, how do I like look at the full journey and how can I make it personalized to every single like customer who walks in the door? And you can kind of do that by adjusting your channels, timing, offers, like based on each like kind of like counts, like role, stage, pain point. That's a lot of information that you can really use to help craft something really incredible. And this just creates like a smarter and more human experience that goes kind of far deeper than just knowing someone's name.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, you can send the personalized message to someone at the wrong time.
Absolutely.
Who cares that it was personalized, right? If it's not hitting them on the right channel at the right time and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and you mentioned, alleviating some of those pain points, and let's talk about analytics as pain point prevention here.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing from the report, framing analytics as the difference between reacting to preventing churn. And so the report states SaaS firms with 100% net retention grow 43.6% annually versus 13.1% when retention slips below 60%. What are some of the early warning metrics that marketers should be tracking to spot churn risk before it bites?
Plain and simple, engagement across the board. Like this is, I would say, often the earliest and strongest indicator, and just kind of like looking out for like drop-offs, like declining like open rates or content interactions, site visits, any changes in kind of like product like patterns or like engagement patterns, because patterns are probably your best indicator of what is to come, as well as how to adapt. So kind of like understanding those like usage patterns, sentiment shifts in feedback, that's a really big one as well. And we see that a lot kind of like in my days in like G2, truly, when you kind of really look into a product profile and you see kind of either the avalanche of review sentiment change, or really like the buildup of review sentiment change, like it really does create a very strong indicator of how people are perceiving or perceive. That perception is something that you can't really get from a lot of like analytics, like right as they come in. It's really like live feedback, So I would say those are definitely some of the early warning signs of churn, like, and just kind of like watching your engagement on every channel, like that paints a picture, and that picture really is a pattern.
Well, and I think that's also an area where AI, as opposed to just, a human looking at charts all day, like AI can really play a strong role here, right?
Totally.
I mean, there are so many things that you could look at as far as trends go, or, there's just too much for a human to do themselves to look at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just crazy because you have to be so reliant, I think, on so many channels. It can be overwhelming. And that really is where that AI can come in and be like, if you put in raw data to like an AI tool and you're like, hey, listen, what are some patterns that you're seeing from this? Like, that's using AI for pain point prevention, like it can be as simple as that.
Yeah, definitely. And so this works best when everything's seamless and connected and, there's no silos and all of those things. But as we all know, and probably most of us have experienced, there are a lot of, not only, we talk often about team silos that, one person doesn't talk to the other or whatever, but data silos are real and also just as, can prevent some of the stuff from being done as well as it could, as well as just some teams, from a digital or data maturity standpoint, some teams being a little bit ahead of other areas.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do something like piloting predictive analytics without waiting for that ideal perfect scenario where everybody's on the same page and singing Kumbaya and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I will say this. I feel like there is no kind of perfect data area unless it has been from immediate adoption when the company was founded. So like, don't feel bad, everyone. This is like a very common problem, which is why tools are being created to help solve it. So you don't really kind of need this like perfect data lake, if you will, like a single silo right from the get. But if you want to start kind of like piloting predictive analytics, you just have to start with the data you trust. So that is kind of like one of my first and best like use cases for it. It's like, what data do you rely on? What data has proven true? What data do you feel has a high impact of use cases? Like if you're identifying at-risk accounts or like surfacing likely buyers and you apply like a simple predictive model or a scoring system to it, based on your existing engagement signals, you'll be able to find kind of like what makes the most sense to make and continue pilot programs off of it. And a lot of this data can be different for everyone. So there isn't one single source of truth. I think that you really have to look at where it makes the most sense for your team, your objective, what you're trying to accomplish from a product perspective. It could be a variety of different things, but whatever data that you find not only most like truly that you trust the most, but the most accurate in what you're trying to achieve, that is probably where I would say that you can use and have a really solid like predictive analytics like use case without kind of just like waiting for the silos to merge.
Yeah. Because that's hopefully everybody's working on that, but it's
fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's always a work in progress, even when it's being done well. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. And that's why like I said that in the beginning, because just like take a breather and like take that load off, because you are not alone. This is a very common problem. And it's something that I know, I'm sure engineers are up at night thinking about it.
Yeah.
How to merge. So don't worry.
Imagine you're a business owner relying on a dozen different software programs, each one disconnected, more expensive, and more complicated than the last. It can be incredibly stressful, right? Now, picture Odoo. Odoo brings all the tools your business needs into one simple platform. CRM, accounting, inventory, manufacturing, marketing, HR, and more. All seamlessly connected. Everything works together, giving you the peace of mind that your business is running smoothly from every angle. Odoo's open source applications are user-friendly and designed to scale with your business, saving you time and money. Say goodbye to juggling multiple platforms and hello to efficient integrated management. Stop wasting resources on complicated systems and make the switch to Odoo today. Visit odoo.com, ODOO.com, and discover how Odoo can simplify and streamline your business operations. Odoo, modern management made simple.
Definitely. Well, and I think that's a good segue to the next thing I wanted to talk about, and certainly a topic near and dear to my heart, the marketing operations part of this, and how automation plays there as well. And certainly, I think marketers aren't alone, but marketers, I look at AI as a great way to automate and thus create efficiencies. And you've argued that aggressive adopters of AI in these areas can cut marketing operating costs by 30%.
Absolutely.
Through AI powered automation. I agree there. For a resource strapped team, where are some of the highest impact areas where automation can prove some quick ROI?
Okay, well, having been on many resource strapped teams over the course of my career,
right?
I know, right? Yeah, over the course of my career, my marketing career came up in startups, and I live and breathe by that. I feel like if you want to be the scrappiest marketer out there, like, you got to start with some startups. And I think that it proves very quickly what works, what doesn't. Yeah. So when you have and you're wearing 17 different hats. So for resource strapped teams, I would say kind of highest impact automation, lead, nurture, and follow up workflows. Truly, automating responses to key triggers, content downloads, demo requests, page visits, that saves times, but also keeps leads warm and ensures nobody is kind of left in the dust, which is something I think just starting a new business, engaging with new business, or just trying to meet that retention, growth, all of these things. It doesn't matter what level you're at or what your business goals are. It's not only relevant, but it's key to kind of really just also from a data perspective, you got to see what works. You got to see what's resonating.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of just leaving money on the table if you don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
And maybe, to that example, I mean, I've worked everywhere from Fortune 50s to startups as well. You may hire an enterprise sales team to follow up and do the white glove service or whatever at the enterprise level, but a startup can set automation and do a lot of this stuff in a really meaningful way. Yeah.
For sure. And it kind of whenever you are thinking about automation with AI, I think it is a little scary because you have to really take the time to set up these workflows, but it really is no risk, no reward, in these cases, because AI is truly meant to be a help and not a hindrance, especially when it comes to automating tasks and really kind of setting the scene of what you want it to do and how you can help it learn to become something so truly sometimes life-changing for some cases. It creates just the opportunity to do more with less. And that, I think, is why we're going to see this, for aggressive users, at least, and aggressive adopters, this huge just operating cost save, because it really is, I think, something I would probably say in the next 6 months, I would encourage everyone to really take a deep dive at where they could implement it, because it really is such a lifesaver.
Yeah. Salesforce found that 39% of marketers don't know how to use Gen AI safely, and 43% don't know how to extract value. It seems like with all the content being created, to our earlier point, how can you not at least have a vague notion of how to extract value? But it is what it is.
Yeah.
But from the safety standpoint, what guardrails, it could be process, policy, training, all the above. What have you seen that works to boost some of the confidence in using these tools in meaningful ways while mitigating risk?
Yeah, for sure. So I think with AI being this brave new world, right? I think you kind of have to think of these as not only continuous education, but I think cautious approach as well. So I would say for larger companies, especially, clear usage policies, define where and how AI can be applied, in what context, what, is maybe crossing a line, what is unethical Like all of those things play a really big part into these usage policies, number one. Number two, I would say human in the loop review processes. Like AI can't just be like left alone. Like you got to think about it like a toddler at the beach. You can't be like, let them walk into the ocean, like
Right.
you got to be like making like sure you have like a very like human and watchful eye on it. Like it has to very much be like oversight in a way that isn't, too daunting, but especially for anything that's customer facing, content, messaging, all of that fun stuff. And then I would say the third is probably regular team training, regular team updates, kind of focused on prompt best practices or data ethics. And especially when it comes to like content or messaging, brand voice alignment. This is something that can get a little tricky. And I talk about this in kind of the first part of my report in our first focus area around content creation, that no matter what tool you use, no matter what kind of makes like the most impact in terms of efficiency, if your brand, your voice, your messaging is skewed and you're using AI, like that's one of the first indicators that you are untrustworthy. Like as a company, as a business, as a brand, whatever it may be. So kind of having these kind of like three little pieces in place to make sure that AI can not only like boost that confidence, but also mitigate that risk is going to be crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. So last topic I want to talk about with you, something I'm watching pretty closely myself, and is search engine optimization.
Yes.
It's been a thing for decades, and now we've got AI and it's changing things, right? So you've noted that, traditional SEO rules don't map clearly to AI answer engines. How should B2B brands be thinking about discoverability and things like that when, it's not just the Google search, spiders and stuff like that are crawling the web anymore?
Yeah. So I think this is something that is not only going to be changing the game for 2025, but just years beyond. Like the evolution in it has been so quick in a sense that I don't think that there was preparation on like the business's end to be like, oh my God, like, well, how do I become like searchable? Because I think it was such like an idea for so long, and the use cases that were more like public and national were kids using it to like write papers, or in some of the more heinous cases, like doctors using it to like take notes. And you're like, oh my God, like this will never touch my area of business. Like we're here, like this is it. So I think that one of the big pieces, like when it comes for like, especially B2B brands, like when like we think discoverability and when we rethink that shift from traditional SEO to AI optimization, I think the focus on creating like really high quality, structured and trustworthy content like that LLMs can easily interpret, and cite, that is huge. Like when I'm looking for a specific something, I don't go to Google anymore. I go to chat. And that is something that I think is so relevant. And it could be truly anything. Like I live in New York City. So like I very much don't like if I need something or if I'm looking for a restaurant or a place like I had to get a pair of shoes fixed, I use chat for that. Like the application is above and beyond just like single, like simplified searches. It's for everything. And when I was looking for actually, I had a girlfriend who, avid G2 user, she uses the compare and contrast of G2's compare pages with chat's findings to see kind of like where and how like that. She literally, I think, just bought for her company. She's like, she's in social media. She just bought a social media tool, like a software tool to kind of like help like amplify like brand presence and brand intel. And she used chat and G2 to figure that out. And she didn't even tell me until after. She was like, oh my God, by the way, I used you guys the other day. But like that is truly like a buyer taking a journey through using an LLM where they would have otherwise used traditional SEO. Right. Which is crazy. And I think like if you're a business trying to figure out like how you can do this, like I think if you double down on just like clear, authoritative, like semantic relevance, that's the other thing too. Like and having that consistent brand presence like across every piece of the internet is what's going to kind of set you apart when it comes to like LLM search. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where it was hard to imagine something supplanting search, right? Like 4 years ago, let's say. I mean, it was like Google is a verb and a a name, right? So,
Totally.
but now it's changed. I mean, still at the end of the day, I mean, good content is good content, right? I mean, what should be the same that, in this scenario? I mean, you talked about some of the differences, but what should brands still keep doing, I guess?
I think you have to have like a true knowledge of your brand value and how you come across in messaging.
Yeah.
When I first started at G2, I was doing a lot of like product like editions, basically. Every single product that comes through on G2 that's submitted is checked by a human. Like, because we want to make sure that there's like integrity behind like the products that are going on our site. Yeah. And you would not believe like some of the product like links and websites that I would see that would have no clear brand messaging like whatsoever, where I would have to dig deep and like Google and research these companies that had no clear brand messaging, but their site looked like something that they had like created with like a developer. So it's like can only really kind of keep up the facade for so long, other than like, oh, well, it looks good, so I must trust them. No. It's beyond that. Brands who have longevity, brands who have like really solid brand integrity from literally like toe to tip, like can really like understand why it's so important to have these like really incredible and solid like messaging pieces that tell you what you do, how you can help, what's like the best way to use me, how much am I, like all of these different things that I think a lot of people don't really think about when they're creating a business from like behind like a screen. And that I think is like some of the best and most genuine ways to keep like longevity in success for a brand, for a business. And you can see that with like Salesforce, exactly what they do.
Right. Right.
Like, that's like a legacy software brand. Microsoft, what they do. Like there's very much brand trust behind being as clear as possible.
Yeah. Love it. Well, Victoria, thanks so much for joining today. One last question for you before we wrap up here. I like to ask everybody, what do you do? What do you do to stay agile in your role, and how do you find a way to do it consistently?
Agility. One of my favorite words. I literally on one of my first tech resumes, I described myself as that in my like opening paragraph of like who and what I'm about. And I had one recruiter, she was like, oh my gosh, agility. I never thought that would be a tool that like I could like rely on for someone. I was like, hell yeah, it is. So I would say probably, I think just always being like a constant student. That is something like you will never know everything. You will not always be right. You will never, like, I think sometimes not know the answer. Like all of those things, I think like having that forever student mindset and the humility to know that you're always going to be a student, I think is what keeps like people agile. And especially for me, I want to kind of just very much, I know this sounds so lame, but it's very much like a student of like life is probably one of the best ways, because in order to really get to know like people and brands and messaging and like what resonates, what doesn't, like you just got to be out there. You got to be learning, reading, listening, like all of these different things. And I think one of the ways that I do it consistently is that I really do carve out the time to make sure that I do that. And I'm not just focused on like a single sector or a single area of interest. That I think is probably what has made me most agile and definitely helped me be consistent doing it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, again, I'd like to thank Victoria Blackwell, Senior Program Manager of Research Insights at G2, for joining the show. You can learn more about Victoria and G2 and get a copy of the report by following the links in the show notes.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks so much. Thanks again for listening to the B2B Agility Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.b2bagility.com. That's b2bagility.com. While you're there, check out my series of best-selling Agile brand guides covering a wide variety of marketing technology topics, or you can search for Greg Kihlstrom on Amazon. Until next time, stay focused and stay agile.
The Agile brand.